for watching GeekWire Studios coverage from AWS reInvent 2022. My name is Brian Westbrook. We are joined by the CEO of CloudFix, Rahul Subramaniam. And first of all, I have to ask, how is CloudFix and what is CloudFix? I get like you're fixing the cloud. What's happening here?
Great question. So let me just give you a little bit of background.
Yeah.
So the other hat I wear is CTO at ESW Capital.
Right.
We're a portfolio of about 150 enterprise software companies. And in that job, I have to manage and run about 40,000 AWS accounts of our own. And one of the big problems that we started having, almost 7 or 8 years ago, by the way, we've been all in on AWS since 2007. So 7 or 8 years ago, we started seeing this big, spike in our AWS costs. And as I tried to, use all the other tools out there in the market, and we were looking at solutions, a big problem that we ran into was everyone was making recommendations. No one was actually fixing my cost problems and getting me the savings. So after a bunch of attempts and trying to make this work with tools, we kind of gave up because it was an unmitigated disaster. And so we took a step back and we said, let's try and figure out how we can actually realize savings, which is fundamentally different from making recommendations about savings. And so what we did was we looked at every AWS recommendation about cost savings, filtered them down to ones that were completely non-disruptive and easy to implement. We automated it all, and we created a solution that started getting us a whole lot of cost savings. Now, about a year and a half or 2 years ago, a lot of our customers came to us and said, hey, we have the same cost problems. And we were like, oh, we have the same solution. So we started packaging it up, and last reInvent, we launched it as CloudFix. So CloudFix basically is a simple automation tool that allows you to implement AWS recommendations and get you 10 to 20% savings on your AWS bill, realized, not recommended.
We'll get to the actual numbers in just a moment, but cost optimization with your AWS instances sounds complicated. I want to ask a two-part question. One, how do you do it? And two, where specifically are you finding the savings?
Great question. So it is complicated. Number one, you have to understand why. Most of the recommendations that come in for cost savings end up becoming the ones where you use the services the most. And invariably, they require almost like open heart surgery on your applications, which most engineering teams are honestly very reluctant to execute.
Right.
So that is extremely hard. The second one you have to realize is that cost savings is not a one-time thing. It's not a one and done. It's a non-stop exercise. It's non-stop for multiple reasons. It's non-stop because AWS is constantly innovating, creating new services, creating new patterns of how you use these services. And that is, of course, very exciting. But at the same time, you have to keep up with all of those changes. And then your teams are not static. Like, it's not like they've launched a bunch of machines and that's it. They're constantly launching new machines. They're constantly launching new services, using new services in different ways. And you have to keep up with that as well. So because it is nonstop, you need a way to leverage all this automation in a scalable manner. Or rather, you've got to fix a bunch of this stuff in a scalable manner. And the only way to do that is with automation. So unless you have standardized the way you go about using certain kinds of resources and you have automation to back up that usage, you really can't realize any savings.
In terms of optimization, where specifically are you seeing the dollars coming back into the customers' pockets? How are they saving money?
So I think there are two categories to that. The first one is certain kinds of optimization that require human judgment. Okay, they require you to analyze your own, applications, have deep knowledge about them, and then make trade-offs. The other ones are a set of very, very simple changes that you can execute that are completely non-disruptive, that should be automated. And to be honest, if your developers are spending any of their time doing this, they're actually wasting time. Your most expensive resources are actually your developers. So you'd much rather have them work on optimizations that require trade-offs to be made and judgments to be made. And therefore, those are the two categories. Specifically in terms of services, every service has certain best practices that allows you to use those services efficiently. And those are the ones that CloudFix, for example, implements as simple automations that you can just execute at scale across all of your accounts.
Now, CloudFix was born internally with your own portfolio
That's
of
correct.
AWS instances back in 2008. Launched as a publicly available, something that anyone using AWS can sign up and subscribe and realize those cost savings. Why do you suppose the timing is right that CloudFix becomes available to anyone using AWS instances, and why is it something that is so important to businesses today?
I think there are a couple of factors that are really important. One is, I think everyone has realized that true innovation is going to be in the cloud. You cannot be on-premise and have the pace of innovation that you want. And therefore, cloud usage, especially in the last couple of years, has really shot up.
Sure.
Across all enterprises. Everyone is signing up to be in the cloud. But particularly now, given the economic scenario that we have, given the economic uncertainty, the looming recession, I think everyone is starting to be cost conscious at the same time. It's not that they don't want to use the cloud, I think they want to just use it more efficiently. And because of that, there's more attention being paid to how people are leveraging these cloud services. There is renewed attention to detail around efficiency. And I think that's a good thing. You want to take those savings and invest them back into innovation.
As a bit of a counter argument to that, if the economy is somewhat uncertain, why would an AWS customer want to invest in another service? Shouldn't they be cutting back?
No, in fact, you should be innovating out of this scenario. If you're not innovating, right, you're going to die. So the only way out of riding out this uncertainty is to constantly innovate, stay ahead of the game. And the only way you can do that is being in the cloud. Now, to be in the cloud and to constantly innovate, you need to be able to carve out savings from any inefficiencies that exist in your existing spend. Take that, use that as an investment to innovate. And I think that's the best way to do it.
What do you say to the customers to say, my code's optimal, we don't have any waste in our AWS implementation, our developers are amazing, we don't need CloudFix?
I think there are two arguments that I would make. The first one is, nothing is optimal. It's constantly changing, constantly evolving. And therefore, as things change, you have to keep ahead of everything that's happening. AWS just made a whole bunch of announcements.
Right.
You have to stay ahead of that curve. The second part of it is, if you have amazing developers, great. Use them to go create even better efficiencies, but things that require big trade-offs. Those savings can actually be really, really big. So use your developers to do those. Anything that is mundane, simple, repetitive, that requires automation, use something like CloudFix to do it. The pricing is super simple. It's a no-brainer to use it to get all your low-level savings that are super simple, get that, reinvest it in doing more innovation.
It sounds like a couple of things. One, it sounds like CloudFix has been a proven product for you internally for the past over 10 years,
That is
almost
right.
15 years. And now for customers, it does feel like a little bit of a no-brainer that you should be optimizing your cloud usage, because it's very easy to have kind of that leaky faucet at the edge of your implementations, at the edge of your development, because you're not necessarily paying attention, you're not minding the shop. You can't possibly look at every little variable to see, oh, this is what this needs to be doing. So you're almost like a leaky water faucet monitor in an automated way for my cloud solution.
Absolutely, and let me give you a very simple example.
Yeah.
2 years ago, AWS came up with this new EBS volume called GP3.
Yep.
Okay, it is an amazing, innovation from AWS, and it is 20% cheaper. AWS, in fact, put out a blog post that described how moving from GP2 to GP3 is going to save you 20%. But guess what? Every time you launch an instance in AWS, the default volume type is GP2. Okay, so who stays on top of that?
Right.
Okay, you need simple automation that just does that for you. It's like a garbage collection of sorts.
Sure.
Right? You're constantly sweeping your house, making sure that everything is pristine, all the hygiene is maintained, and you're staying on top of all of these optimizations.
So you're paying a little bit for a housekeeper, but you're making back in the time that you can redevote your resources elsewhere, and certainly the efficiencies gained by having a well-running house, if you will.
Absolutely.
To compare the analogy just a little bit further. What are you talking, when you meet with customers here at AWS reInvent, we're here in Las Vegas, what are you chatting with your customers? What are they asking you? What are they telling you? What's on their mind right now?
I think being efficient in the cloud is absolutely on top of mind for everyone. Most customers feel overwhelmed by over 100,000 API that exist today in AWS, and the vast majority of services that are there, they're still struggling to figure out how to leverage it, and most importantly, leverage it efficiently.
Sure.
Right? They see all the potential for innovation, but they want to do it in an efficient manner. And they're looking out for any tool and any system that can help them be efficient and realize savings. They are all bought in on innovation, they are all bought in the cloud. It's just a question of how to be efficient.
And speaking of being efficient, you have a podcast, AWS Insiders.
That's
and
right.
I had an opportunity to check out a couple of the episodes of the podcast. It's A, it's fun, but B, there's a lot of really good information. How is using your experience with AWS, how is it that you're turning that back out into a podcast? What motivated you to want to do that?
So I think it's really simple. Like I said, I started in 2007 with AWS services, and I think I was privileged enough to start in the early days when there were literally 2 services. There wasn't even a console back then. There was just a bunch of API. And having grown with AWS through the last 15 years, I learned, and my team learned a whole lot of stuff by trial and error. And we kind of lived through a lot of failure to learn all of this stuff. And I think today, as customers and other AWS customers kind of start using AWS services, I believe that they invariably feel so overwhelmed by all of this information, and the fact that unfortunately AWS is not very prescriptive or opinionated about what customers should do or how they should specifically use a particular service. So I just feel like a duty, or feel like part of a community, because I wish I had that then. Back then when I was failing at at multiple attempts at trying stuff out. So just being part of this amazing community, I feel like I just need to contribute back from all of our experiences, because I learn a ton from other people, from speaking to them about their experiences as well. So I think the whole surface area of these services is just so vast. It helps to share and understand how people are using services, how they're getting efficient, and not only sharing our tools and our learnings, but also learn from them so that we can get better ourselves.
I'm really excited to see how CloudFix helps your customers improve their cost optimization using cloud services with AWS. Rahul Subramaniam, thank you so much for spending the time with us. I'm Brian Westbrook. You're watching GeekWire Studios coverage of AWS reInvent 2022.
Thank you so much for having me.